my attention was brought to the question of the week. The question of the week is, what are you avoiding? And I honestly don't know really what I'm going to talk about tonight, and part of it is going to be I'm going to be talking about you guys, and you're going to tell me what you're avoiding. But whenever I think about the topic for the meditation class, I think about what's like a cool story that has something to do with this, and I was really struggling for a while to come up with this. But something that is at least somewhat more than tangentially related to it is one of my favorite stories from the book Zen Flesh, Zen Bones. And it goes like this. There was dinner time at the monastery, and it had to be rushed that day. It was fast. They didn't have that much time. And so the monks were out there quickly chopping off the heads of vegetables and putting them in the soup, and one of them was going so fast that he didn't see he chopped off the head of a snake and it ended up in the soup. And so the master is sitting there drinking and eating his soup, and of course the snake head ended up in the master's soup bowl, because where else would it end up? And so the master calls over the chef, and the chef walks over. Yes sir. The master says, "What's this?" He holds up the snake head. And the chef or the cook says, "Oh, thank you, master." And he grabs it and he pops it in his mouth and walks away. And that's it. And the story is titled "Eating the Blame." And it's like, imagine what kind of like attitude or foresight you would have to just, when something like that is presented to you, you just instantly do what needs to be done and move on. That's not the way that we handle things usually. Can you imagine how mortified he would be if your master at this Buddhist monastery, which is a vegetarian monastery, you end up with a snake head in your master's soup, and you were the one that cooked it? You should be mortified, except you're a monk, so you've been meditating a lot and you've been practicing being in the moment. And so in that moment, when you're presented with this terrible situation, instead of like hemming and hawing about it and like, I don't know what to say, this is so embarrassing, or I'm going to get in trouble or whatever, just snatch it and eat it, and that's it. Be done with it. How many times in life do we come upon situations like this that are made so much worse because we avoid it, we put it off? And I'm not just talking about procrastination, although that definitely comes into play, but I mean there are things that it's like we might be avoiding it so hard that we're past procrastination, like we are never going to do that thing. And maybe it's a tough conversation that you know that you need to have, or there's some part of you that just really wants to have it, but then there's the other part of you that you listen to that's just too scared to have it. Or there's, the simple day-to-day tasks that we put off that build up, and it just like weighs on us. I want to focus a little bit more on the idea of the first, like these difficult things that we don't want to deal with. These things that we're avoiding and that we've been avoiding for a while. Not just putting it off like, I've got to go to the DMV, but I don't want to do it today. I mean something that there's more of an emotional response to, almost like a visceral response, that you're avoiding having to deal with this thing. So you're going to tell me, you're going to raise your hand, and you're going to tell me something that you're avoiding. And you're going to wait until I call on you. You're not just going to call out. But there's something, right now, there's something in your head right now, and for a lot of you it's like, yeah, but I don't want to tell people about that. I'm not going to let everybody else know about the things that I'm avoiding. There's something that you're avoiding. What is it? You're avoiding raising your hand right now to tell me about the thing that you're avoiding. And look for, if anybody, like if Kaya posts the thing that she's avoiding too, we can talk about that. Nobody is going to be bold. What'd she say?
She's laughing.
What do you got?
So one of the things that's going on in my life is that Ian doesn't like to read very much.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm avoiding, like me dealing with it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm making him deal with it, and I'm avoiding me dealing with it. Like,
Sure.
like really
So, for those of you who are not listening to this live and you can't hear what Catherine just said, she's talking about her son does not enjoy reading and he's not doing it a lot. And so there's the side of it that is like, well, I can just make him read and make him deal with it. But then there's the part of it that I have to deal with. And so what is it that you have to deal with that you don't want to deal with about that? Because it's easy to just tell him you have to read. Is it like I got to deal with thoughts of, oh, am I being a good enough mother right now because my kid doesn't want to read?
It's dealing with the pushback.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like dealing with the pushback, so I avoid it. I'm just like, not again. Okay, just.
But isn't that why you have kids in the first place, is to learn how to deal with pushback? So you don't want to deal with the pushback from your son when you tell him, yeah.
I would like it to be joyful and fun for him to read.
Mm-hmm. So part of it is also maybe coming up, like having to deal with being creative and finding a way that's going to really inspire him to read. And yeah, sometimes we don't feel like putting in the effort to be creative or find ways around situations. We just like, it's not working. But yeah, there's usually, if you put a little extra time and effort into it, you can come up with a way around it. But that's, yeah, I get it. Like, I mean, I'm not a father. I get some of your kids, but I only get them for like a half an hour to an hour a couple times a week. You got to deal with them all day, every day. And I can't imagine what it would be like to have that responsibility of, here's this young mind that I'm trying to like encourage and mold, but not make him like me, just make him the best that he can be. And I'm sure there are questions that come up with that all the time, like, am I doing this right? Am I messing up? But also like, how am I going to get around this sticky situation? So I have a question. If you wait until next year, do you think it's going to be any better?
No.
Probably not. In fact, at that point, he'll be like, you'll be getting calls from his teachers. I don't know why your kid can't read. So you need to like deal with it. So putting it off is not necessarily going to help. And is being afraid. I know that you have great relationship and communication with your kids. Not everybody is like that, but let's just pretend. Is being afraid of having that conversation going to help at all? No. So oftentimes what there is to do is to just like start having the conversation and deal with it. And there's going to be pushback and it's going to be all that stuff. But at least then you'll be done with it. The weight of it will be off of your shoulders and you can be like, well, he pushed back and he's still not reading, but I had the conversation. I did something, right? What else? What are you avoiding? Oh, everybody else just gets right to it. It's like, there's a thing that I need to do. I just did it. I did it already. It's all done. There's nothing that you're avoiding. There's nothing that you're putting off. There's no kind of hard conversation. Yes, ma'am, Yvonne.
I have been avoiding prototyping new ideas for my small business because I started with one idea, I kind of fell in love with it, and I was like, I'm ready to go. I'm just going to build this. I'm going to gather all my information. I'm going to pitch it. And then I talk about the idea with some business friends, and they're like, well, what about this? And what about this? And I felt that part of me that was like, no, resistant. And so, but I know when doing a business, one should always explore all avenues. So as it's sunk in, I've been trying to build new prototypes for it, but there's definitely a part of me that I'm kind of dragging along.
Yeah. I can relate to this from just, from my perspective as a small business owner. One of my favorite conversations, and I mean that completely sarcastically, is when I tell, people ask me all the time, like, how's the dojo doing? And it's like, I never know what to say because it's like, we're doing, and we get more students. I love teaching classes. It's a ton of fun. On one level, it's like the same thing every single day. Because it's just like I go to the dojo and I do what I love to do every day. There's nothing, it's not like, oh, today I just got this one student who I really hate. It's just like always, it's always awesome. But people ask me and I struggle with it. And so then the conversation turns into, well, have you ever thought about doing this? And it's like most of the suggestions that I get are utter crap. People don't know what they're talking about, and they suggest things that I would never ever do because it's ridiculous in this environment to like, you know, why don't you paper the city with flyers, like throw them out of an airplane, or like why don't you do a birthday parties where you have 1,000 kids come in and then you cut the birthday cake with a samurai sword and all the crazy stuff that they do out there. But then every once in a while somebody gives me a good idea and I'm like, oh, but I've been doing it this way and I'm so used to it, and I've got to at least consider that there's some other way to do it that may or may not be better, but there's the possibility that, you know, something more could come. I could get more students. I could, you know, could touch people on a more deep level or whatever. And so I get the same kind of feeling sometimes where I recognize this is actually a pretty good idea, and I should probably do this, but part of it is laziness. And it's tough because like you can't really point to me and say, well, Sifu was lazy. But there are moments in time where I'm lazy. And then I get off of it and I'm like, all right, it's time to get this done. And then there are parts of it where it's like, I'm being stubborn. And I'm not as stubborn as some people that I know, but I can be stubborn. I can be like, I know how this is supposed to be done, and this is the way that I do it, the way that it's supposed to be done, damn it. But sometimes it's like you got to recognize that stubbornness is not really serving me. There's something else out there that's possible. So a great thing to recognize with whatever you're avoiding or putting off or whatever is, where are you getting stopped? And it's usually in you, in here, and sometimes you're getting stopped for a legitimate reason. And sometimes you're getting stopped for what you are convincing yourself is a legitimate reason and is not. And it's like you got to recognize, really, where's it coming from? Is it coming from laziness, stubbornness, fear is a huge one? Or is it coming from something that, like, no, this is actually a thing that I have to deal with and work my way around or whatever? If it's really just being lazy, man, that's an easy one to deal with. If you ask yourself, am I being stopped by laziness? The answer is yes. Okay, just do the thing. Just do it. And you might not do the whole thing right now, but you can start, right? Just like beginning to have a conversation. If you recognize that you're being stopped by stubbornness, then you got to ask yourself, is this really worth me being able to like have the pride of knowing that I know best? Or am I willing to set aside the ego and set aside just this, I've always done it this way, and just work on it in some new way? If it's fear that's stopping you, ask yourself, is that really the way that I want to live my life and deal with, you know, my passion and my business and the way that I deal with other people? Do I want to come from fear? And probably you will answer no. And then it's a little bit of a process sometimes to get beyond it, but usually it's kind of the same thing as laziness. It's just like, just put it aside. Like from the talk a couple weeks ago, you know, you are God. It's like when you recognize that this fear is kind of silly and doesn't really have anything to do with reality. It's just like a little thing in your head that you can just like, that's ridiculous. Like, I don't need to deal with life on that level. I'm more than that. So ask yourself, what's stopping me? Where am I being stopped? And then how can I deal with that quickly and effectively? What else? Yes, Kaya.
I'm avoiding thinking about the future, such as finding an ideal romantic partner, much to the dismay of family and friends, and going more with the flow and dating someone who I know is short term.
Okay. So how do I avoid, this is kind of a serious one, Kaya. How do I avoid, I am avoiding, how do I not avoid finding a serious romantic partner? What did she say? Oh, ideal romantic partner. I don't know anything about this. I mean, I know what we're supposed to do. So when we, man, it's because, Kaya, because you're, part of it is because you're coming at it from, well, my family is making me, or there's this pressure that I should be doing it this way, or I should be doing it that way. I think it's a fairly common thing that we end up, I'm kind of diverging from the main point of this talk, but this is where I'm going with it anyways. We have a tendency to choose the person who we're going to be with based on how it's going to make us look. And is this person going to be okay with my family? Are they going to be impressive? Do they look good on paper? Do they have a good enough job? Are they beautiful, outgoing, or handsome, whatever? And then that's just never helpful. That doesn't help at all. That's stupid. Stop doing that. And then there's so you're avoiding kind of getting into something that's serious. We don't like getting into things that are serious, be it relationships or committing to a job or a career or something that we know there are real consequences to. And I'm for sure an anomaly because I knew that I wanted to teach martial arts when I was 18 and I never looked back. I mean, I just literally did a year of classes with Sifu Brown and decided that's it. I'm going to do martial arts. I'm going to just, I told Sifu Brown and he said, okay, this is what we're going to do. And I just did it. And it took a long time. And I knew it going into it. There was no part of me that thought I'll just kind of try it out and see how it goes. I knew this is just the thing that you're going to do. You're never going to, what's the job that people really want to do? I don't know, all I ever wanted to do was martial arts. What is it?
Be a doctor.
I'm never going to be a doctor. I never wanted to be a doctor. I don't like memorizing stuff. I'm never going to be a professional tennis player. I played a little bit of tennis. I'm never going to, whatever. Any of those, I'm not going to be a movie star. I'm not going to be a rock star. I'm not going to be something that the majority of people really look at and go oh, that's amazing. Here, you guys are the only people who go, oh, that's amazing to what I do. And that's enough for me. But there's something to that, really diving in and committing to something that is scary, because we always think what am I missing out on? What about all the other opportunities? And it's, at the end of the day, it's just another excuse. Sifu Brown has this great concept that I love to steal from him about, when you talk about a career, it's you can get a new career in 5 years. It's you get a degree in something and then a year of job experience and you're in it. And if you decide that you hate it, great. Go back to school and do something else. Now, some of you say, well, I don't have that much time or I don't have the money or whatever to just go back to school and get a new job. But you can make it work. You can find something that you love to do and go hard and not be all wishy-washy about it. And then at some point, maybe it becomes clear, this is definitely not for me. And so then you move on to the next one. But instead of doing that, we're just kind of 1 foot over here and 1 foot over here, and you never really commit to something. It's the same thing in relationships, the same thing in a lot of different things in life. To fully commit to something and decide, I'm going for this thing, and not have to worry about what I'm missing out on, or not have to worry about what the consequences are going to be. Just there are consequences, and there are things that you're going to miss out on. But at the end of the day, you're missing out on everything. And you miss out on all the good consequences if you don't commit and just go. So I don't know what that's a bunch of stuff. That's laziness and stubbornness, and it's I don't want my family to tell me what to do with my romantic relationships or all of that stuff. So ask yourself where you're being stopped. But there's also not necessarily such a thing as an ideal person or an ideal job or an ideal whatever. It is just what you choose it to be. And so I'm not going to tell you, Kaya, who you should date, but I'm saying at some point you'll need to just choose somebody. And maybe they're good on paper, maybe they don't. Maybe your family loves them, or maybe your family hates them. But there has to be a commitment. There has to be a choice. And if you're avoiding something on some level, there always has to be a choice. You make the choice, I'm going to do this. Or you make the choice, I'm not going to do this. Okay, but choose. If it's existing in your head as this thing that you're avoiding, and there's this like push-pull going on, and there's all this pain and awkwardness associated with it, you got to just do something about it. Find some way to jettison it. Do it or don't do it. It's like in Karate Kid, Miyagi Sensei talking to Daniel-san. Daniel-san's like, yeah, I kind of want to do karate, but I don't really know. It's how's the actual saying go? Wait, I'm thinking of but I'm thinking of Star Wars. That's wrong. But let's do the Karate Kid one. So it's walk on this side of road, okay. Walk on this side of road, okay. Walk in the middle, squish like grape. I used that story this morning. I love that story. You can't be like back and forth and waffling on things in life. And it's like, really think about like the like most powerful version of yourself. The version of you that is just like get stuff done, but is like, people look at him and go like, oh, and like just the ideal way that you want to be. Does that person kind of go like, I don't know if I want to do this or not? Like, no, the person who you want to be just makes a decision and gets it done. And it doesn't always work out, but if we're always existing in this like purgatory of decision making and avoiding things, the people who go down in history were not people who were like, I don't really know, unless they're in history for really messing up, and not making a decision fast enough. I can't think of anybody, but I'm sure there's somebody like that. We got anything else? Somebody wants to give me one more thing that they're avoiding. Yes, Leah?
I will not avoid this, but I like your story at the beginning about taking the blame.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be brave enough to talk about this story. As you know, a few weeks ago, I got kicked in the knee,
Mm-hmm.
and I was a little huffy, and I made a statement like, well, what type of moron is this person in me?
Uh-huh.
So anyway, and flashback, a week and a half, and I'm sparring with you, and I think I'm kicking you in the thigh, but actually you said it was in the knee.
Mm-hmm.
So your response was, what type of moron kicked someone in the knee?
Yeah.
And so my response was, I'm a moron, and I'm over right now.
That's great. Yeah. So, and it would be, nice to get lessons like that as soon as possible without having to kick your Sifu in the knee. But yeah. A kind of an aside. If you find yourself getting upset at somebody, a really helpful thing to do is to ask yourself, have I ever done that thing that I'm upset at that person for? Or even, could I conceive of myself doing that thing that I'm upset at that person for? And then usually you can just get right over it. It doesn't even take a week and a half. But thank you for getting over it. Dina, do you think that I wasn't going to call on you since I said that was the last one? Too bad.
I'm so emotionally invested in this thing that I can feel my blood pressure going up.
Mm-hmm.
But
It's the good stuff. The dirt.
I have a relatively new body of artwork
Mm-hmm.
that it's just sitting in my studio against the wall, and it will not sell sitting in my studio. It has to be out in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to get together a package and submit the artwork to the extremely small number of art galleries that are in LA and also are appropriate for my work.
Mm-hmm. Let me catch up people who can't hear you right now.
Oh, okay.
So you've got a new body of artwork. It's sitting at home against the wall. It's not going to sell. So you got to start with the process of getting it out there so that it can possibly sell.
And I think I've been trying to figure out why exactly I can't make myself do it. There's a bunch of reasons, but I think the main reason is that the odds of rejection are enormous.
Mm-hmm.
And it's theoretically quite possible that none of the galleries will be interested.
Mm-hmm.
There's no other, there may be another option, but I don't know what it is. And so it's terrifying. Because
Yeah.
if they all say no, I'm screwed. And
Yeah, talk about
feels.
and I get like the feeling that you're describing. I can feel my blood pressure raising, and it's like there's like a tension that comes along with just thinking about that, and talk about like just the visceral experience of like the fear of rejection, and it's rough. And I mean, we've all experienced it on some level, but when you're talking about, I poured myself into something, and this is my everything, and there's a possibility that I'm going to put it out there, I'm going to put myself out there essentially to just be stomped on, laughed at, and rejected. So rough. And many people choose, I'm just not even going to put myself out there in the first place. Because then, I can't fail if I never really tried. And if your artwork stays sitting at home against the wall, you never get to know whether you got rejected by everybody or that people love it. And it's funny because many of us would choose the former. I would rather just not know that I'm being rejected and just like refuse to put it out there in the first place, rather than risk this rejection in order to gain the possibility of people love it and it sells and it works. So that's tough, but at the end of the day, that you have to risk putting it out there, and you have to go through the process, and I'm sure it's arduous. And if you were me in middle school, going back to serious relationships, me in middle school, I was like, kind of a goober of a kid, a loner, and like people laughed at me, and I would try to make people laugh, but mostly it was not the good kind of laughing at me. And one day I just decided, like, I gotta get a girlfriend. I was like 10 years old, and I literally went up to almost every single girl. There were like 20 girls in my class, and I think there were 2 of them who I just was not into. But like 18 girls, I asked out, and I just walked up to them. I was 10 years old. Do you want to go out with me? No. Like some of them literally laughed at me. Do you want to go out with me? No. I got faces like, oh, so many. And I got 0 girls to agree to go out with me. And yet I have survived, and I've had relationships, like great relationships. And it's quite a feat to be able to go boldly into this possibility of rejection, and to know that it might happen, and know that you will survive, and there can only come good from it. You get strong from rejection, or you get what you wanted to and you don't get rejected. But if your artwork sits at home against the wall, there's no opportunity at all. And if I hadn't asked out anybody, there would be no opportunity for me. And it's a tricky one. We don't like rejection, human beings, because we take things very personally. And of course you should take rejection of your artwork very personally, because it's a very personal thing. And yet at the end of the day, it's not. It's like that person didn't like it. That's that person. It's not you. So just another great opportunity to recognize like where you're being stopped and decide, do I want to let fear stop me from doing that? Do I want to let fear of the possibility of rejection, or even fear of, well, what if I succeed and then I have to like keep doing greater and greater stuff to keep succeeding? That's a huge fear of a lot of people. But it's still fear. So stop dealing with that. What?
Mia has a question.
Great, Mia, what is it?
It is it good or bad that I avoid studying when I know the material for a quiz?
Mia wants to know, is it good or bad to avoid studying if I know the material for a quiz? Do your homework and study. You're a kid. You're in school. You're supposed to study. And if you know it already, then don't spend very much time on it. But double check. That's it. So we're going to meditate. And look, in meditation, one of the things that we practice is just like recognizing what's going on within us, right? Our thoughts and our emotions. And sometimes you'll be meditating and you know you're supposed to just be clearing your mind and letting the thoughts go, but then you'll let yourself get wrapped up in a train of thought. And sometimes you'll get wrapped up in something where you get a feeling, you get like an actual response to it. And then you know that something's up with that. That's something that you need to deal with. So if you want to have fewer of those things pop up in your meditation and mess with you, stop avoiding them. Deal with it. And if it is something that pops up in meditation, take a mental note and then, shelve it. And then come back to it after meditation. And right after meditation would be a great time to deal with the stuff that we've been avoiding the most, because you've got some perspective. Sit comfortably.